Welcome to the Future Jam. I'm here with Andrew, last name redacted, and possible co-host Harrison, last name redacted as well. We're all gathered here. This is the first time we've had 3 people in one room in the basement, the recording basement. And
the recording dungeon.
It's more like a dungeon, but it's not. It's fully furnished, so it's not dungeon-like at all.
It's a finished dungeon.
It's a finished dungeon. Just ignore the shackles on the walls.
The torture rack is actually painted and has a really nice hardwood finish to it.
Yeah, so ignore all those items. And the topic tonight, I'm going to kind of intro it real quick. And throughout the show, we've talked about endangered jobs, like jobs that are being automated and people are left on the street. I guess Harrison drives trucks, and that's a big area that could be under fire pretty soon.
Right. Yeah, that's what they say. I mean, right now, there's been tons of companies investing into self-driving cars. Uber I forget the astronomical amount of money that they put towards self-driving cars, but that's one of the big companies doing that. It's on its way to be phased out as far as being a human-done job.
Yeah, so almost every industry, so I have some stats here. Stats are kind of boring, but I'm going to bring them in real quick.
They're important.
Yeah, they're important. According to this study done, so insurance underwriters for, say, life insurance, health insurance, whatever type of insurance organization, 99% of jobs are at risk of being automated. Then construction laborers, 88% of construction laboring jobs are at risk of being automated. Harrison, truck driving jobs, 79%.
I'm surprised that number's lower than construction workers. I would have put that rate at higher.
I'm guessing...
Is this in like the next 10 years, or is there a time frame attached to this?
Yeah, I'm guessing. I'm trying to read through the article real quick, but yeah, I think it's in the future. It's in the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah. Wow.
So I guess a lot of construction jobs could go away because of the 3D printed buildings, possibly.
Wow.
Robotic builders.
Yeah, it's probably easier to like experiment with 3D printing buildings than it is to have self-driving trucks. Because like if you're experimenting with a self-driving truck massively, like on a massive scale, you're just going to cause a bunch of accidents. Whereas like with 3D printing stuff, you're like, oh, we might have an accident and we have to knock it down and start over, where it's not going to hurt people. So they're probably more willing to mess up with the construction than they are with a self-driving truck.
And I guess tools as well could, take a job from taking 5 people down to 2 people.
Right.
So, okay, that makes more sense. All right.
And they said farm laborers, 97%.
Oh, yeah.
Fast food cooks, 97%. Mail carriers, surprisingly, just 68%. You'd think that'd be higher as well. But
I mean, if you're going to have... you can have a robot going from like house to house delivering. Like sorting's already done by like a lot of automation, but do you think they would?
Each house is so specific and people can put their mailboxes in weird areas.
I mean, I think if they automated that, they would just change the like regulation. Like you have to have this kind of mailbox on this spot on your, or else you're not going to get your mail.
A lot of things are being automated, basically.
You see how automation is just making the world a better place.
One weird thing is it looks like developing countries like Ethiopia, Nepal, El Salvador, China, India, those are actually more at risk than countries like United States, England, more countries that are already more developed. And I'm thinking the reason that is a lot of those jobs in India, China, they're more construction labor-based jobs that are easier to automate. So they're all going through the Industrial Revolution. A lot of the Industrial Revolution jobs are being automated. So that could actually hurt a lot of these economies early on.
Yeah, I could see that because using other countries' technology, if a country is way ahead of them as far as their development, I could see that, because where we had to go through each of those stages at a much slower pace, the growing pains of their countries would happen at such a rapid pace that the already impoverished citizens that, I mean, let's be honest, a lot of those countries that you're referring to are very impoverished. It would only make it a bit worse.
Yeah, that's true. I completely agree. And I guess the reason why I'm just going through all this real quick is I want to lead it into what we're going to be talking about today. The whole conversation is surrounding this idea, and that is, if automation takes most of the jobs, will we as a society need a universal basic income? And real quick, let me define what universal basic income is for the audience, just in case they don't know. Basic income is a system similar to Social Security in which all citizens of a country receive a set amount of money on a regular basis. This money is typically provided by the government or a similar public organization, and this income provided unconditionally is given in addition to any income from which a person works. So it's money in addition to what you earn from your job. The goal of a basic income system is to allow every person to have a fair chance at an adequate quality life, and it is a way to combat income inequality. So, Andrew, how do you think that's different than the welfare system we already have in place? What makes it separate from that?
One of the things, there's actually, I was reading up earlier, there's several different versions of UBI that have been proposed. Different systems, like if you look back to old economists, some of them only wanted to do like a welfare type thing. So these are the really conservative thinkers. They were in favor of it because they were in favor of getting rid of all the welfare, all the different organizations. So you have this welfare thing, this thing, food stamps, all these different ones. And their thing was let's just roll it all into one. Anyone that makes below this certain amount a year automatically gets a guaranteed income.
Well, the current welfare system is if you get a job, you don't get welfare anymore.
Right.
So universal basic income, you get that income whether you have a job or not.
Right. But they're
as long as you make less than a certain amount. I think you can work a job, because I think the idea was to encourage people to get a job, but it's one of those things where they won't take it away from you if you get a job, but once you start making over a certain amount, then you can take care of yourself and you won't be getting that basic income.
So what I was saying is there's different ones. So there's what you were talking about, which is there are some that are proposed that where every citizen just gets this amount, period. So even if you're a multimillionaire or billionaire like Bill Gates, you would still get, how many thousand per year that they give. And then no matter what, you get the money. So you could get a job, you could not get a job. And in those instances, what some economists are saying, there's some people that are just going to sit around and do nothing, but most people aren't. Basically, they're saying, because some people would be like, oh, well, that takes away motivation to work. And their answer is basically, there's going to be some people, that are going to be content having the minimum. So, it's basically, it's enough to get, scrape by on. And that's it. And if you want more than that, if you want fancier stuff, you want to buy fancier stuff or have fancier things, you can do that. You can get a job, make more, but you're still going to get the basic stuff too. So, but there's also the one I was talking about where it's only people who make under a certain amount get it.
Do you think the government should regulate what people can spend that money on? So, if somebody gets a $10,000 check or a monthly stipend.
People pronounce it both ways.
Okay,
matter.
So if you get a monthly stipend, right. I think it's stipend.
I think you're right. With
Okay,
that
sounds
second
fine.
one.
All right. So if you get a monthly stipend,
Maybe one's British.
yeah.
Stipend.
I like a good stipend
How am I going to edit this? Okay, so if you,
with the computer, I think.
so if you have a monthly stipend, should the government say, "Hey, you can spend it on this, but you can't spend it on that"?
Well, no, because the whole concept behind the UBI was to get rid of that. So, you have all the stuff now. You get food stamps, you get certain amount for this from different organizations or different things. The whole idea was UBI was to roll all of it into one. They give you the money, and you have to use it and you can use it however you want, really. I mean, and if you use it up on expensive stuff, that's your fault. And that's how I feel about it. I mean, what do you think, Harrison?
So I've listened to a lot of the arguments for and against it, and it's one of those things where, for me, I have to look at it as the biggest possible way, big picture, as big of a picture as I can imagine. And what it comes down to is, it sounds good in concept, but I don't think I could get behind it as an actual thing. And there are some aspects of it that sound, I guess, appetizing, like the idea of condensing all the different types of welfares into a single package. If that was the case, I think it could be done. But I don't believe that that's possible. It could be possible. I think it would actually be better for people if we could condense all the different types of welfare systems into a single universal basic income type of thing, because I think it would be more focused for people and give people the opportunity to make decisions for themselves. But then you would have to have the freedom and the ability to rely on people to actually seek the help they need, rely on the good-willed people that are making more than what they need to donate towards nonprofits and whatnot to supplement some of these other issues that the government was doing before. And that's a lot of change that I don't know if it's possible. And if it is possible, putting a time frame on that would be really, really difficult. So I'm going to kind of try to take more of a counter argument to the idea of universal basic income, just because I think that if there is a way to make the idea of that succeed, it has to be focused on what the idea was focused on achieving. And so for me, I feel like empowering individuals rather than relying on the government is where the foundation of my ideas kind of come from.
Now, universal basic income, I guess in some instances would replace, like, you could survive just on that. And in some instances, it would just be an additional amount of money on top of what you already make. So if you have a very low paying job, this universal basic income will keep you from being below the poverty line. Or the problem I'm coming up with is, if a lot of jobs are automated, then there's not going to be some low paying jobs available. So there might be people that are not able to work at all.
That's true. Some people may not be able to work in the same capacity that they could, but that's up to the individual to be able to find their new opportunity. When I've had jobs in the past and I found myself being unhappy, or I saw my job being changing in a way I didn't like, I took it upon myself to go to another job. I took it upon myself to find another way to make income. Worst case scenario, I'm a guy that likes to camp. If I was a homeless person, all my job, all my savings, all my anything was taken away from me, go back to fishing. Part of the growing pains of social systems and just like policies in general seems to be seeing people that are suffering and allowing them to learn how to overcome that. My final thoughts on universal basic income, just for introduction purposes, on my thoughts are just that it sounds good in concept, but is in application, I just don't think it allows individuals enough personal responsibility to learn from their mistakes and to overcome their problems as good people would like to be able to help them. It does not seem to be a fully fleshed out idea that would truly answer the problems that this idea aims to answer.
I would like to propose, maybe not a counter argument, but like, I guess questions.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, people are against like welfare system. Some people are against it like now in general, just because like people do abuse it. And that's a reality. I guess a couple questions would be like, does giving someone a universal basic income guarantee them not self-empowering? So I guess so have you ever read like any of like the like Psychology Today articles about like the psychology of poverty and stuff like that? Like
I
what
haven't
it does?
read articles, but there's some really good interviews that I listened to.
Just like what it does to people's like mindsets, and just like what it, like just one little thing can just like destroy just momentum that they're making. Whereas like I think, and there will be some people that just have no motivation to do anything, but I think just having that minimum baseline there, that's a safety net, knowing that even if you lose your job, even if this stuff happens, you're not going to be homeless. You're not going to have to like, oh my gosh, can I feed my kids?
Yeah, but
oh my gosh, can I get health care?
Yeah, but the thing is just having a universal basic income doesn't prevent any of that, because so many people, like say you win the lottery, people blow that. So many people like even blow the money they get from
I know
currently. So how will we combat that? So will we say, hey, the fallback is if you use up all your universal basic income, all the basic food amenities that are important, that's free at the grocery store?
No, you get that. And like I said, there's going to be people that I think people like to overemphasize people that abuse the system. It's really not that big of a portion of people.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So you're gonna have people that do abuse the system. I guess my point is like poverty, especially when you're in a family that has been in poverty, and then like the next generation is in poverty, it creates a mindset. So
right.
if you have someone being pulled out, eventually you're gonna have.
But how do you pull someone out? I think that's really the big argument is this going to be something that pulls someone out, or is this just going to keep someone from completely crashing? And my mindset is more on the idea of people have to learn. And I feel like just seeing how addiction has been in my life, not like me personally, technically, but in my surrounding life,
our whole area.
Being in poverty is almost, in my eyes, a kind of addiction. Once you
or
hit
disease, or it's kind of a disease.
It's almost like a psychological disease. Like you can't help but spend your money. You can't help but not save your money. It's hard for me to understand. But basically, what I'm getting at is, with addiction, you have to let people choose for themselves to start making those positive steps forward. And with poverty, you have to let people start making those positive steps forward by hitting rock bottom. And if everyone knows that, oh, worst case scenario, I'm going to make like $10,000, $12,000 a year, no matter what, well, guess what? Now you've encouraged that kind of person to do that.
I think what I was saying is like, I think people overestimate how many of the people are like that.
How many would you estimate?
Well, I
mean, how many don't abuse this? I would say maybe like 15% abuse it.
We're just
like
pulling numbers out.
Yeah, like I'm pulling it out of the air. I'm saying I have
out of the
like
thin air.
I have friends that do live in poverty, and like they would love nothing more than to just be stable.
Now the thing is this. Is it an education issue, or is it the way they're brought up, or what? Like
it's a variety. One of my friends, she's still on the poverty line. She has a master's degree. She's done all this stuff. Like she's super intelligent. The only thing that's wrong is that she's epileptic, and so she can't hold a stable job. She has to be on like disability insurance, and she has an autistic child. That was the thing that happened when she was in her early 20s. And she fully owns up to like mistakes that she's made, and she tries like all the time. Mm-hmm. But when you are at that point in poverty, getting out, even when you want to, even when you are making steps, is almost impossible. So, not completely impossible, but it is very, very, very difficult.
It's very difficult, and this is the thing that I keep like hearing. And I feel like it's more about not really education. It's more about just being honest with people. And what are the things that you have to do to overcome certain issues. And one of the things, like your friend there, like in the long run, it may not have been an issue with having a kid because she's going to be a great mom eventually, maybe now. I don't know her situation. But the thing is, one of the biggest issues with poverty is having kids before you're ready. And when that happens, it throws your life into chaos. And so there's, in like talking about like psychology and like statistics and just things that have been scientifically proven, some of the top things that you can do to not be in poverty is to graduate high school, not have kids before you're ready, and to not go to jail. And if you do those three things, you have like, I think they say like it's like a 75% chance of being in middle class. And so middle class is way above poverty. You're going to be a very happy person. So I feel like right now, with a lot of the feel good kind of culture, we have to be honest with people. It's like, hey, if you want to succeed, we have to be honest with bad decisions, and we have to be honest about what you can do to go against that. Like,
yeah, but that's education, right? Just that's part of the education. People don't get educated in high school properly on how to not get in debt early on or how to save their money. The thing is it's a cultural thing. Like, you grow up in poverty, that's all you know, and then your children grow up in poverty, that's all they know. Develop their own culture around it, and they have trouble communicating with other culture groups or other, I guess, classes.
And you get siloed.
And they've probably, like, they watch the outside world, people that aren't in poverty, like, either make fun of them or, like, they just come off sounding like you just need to get educated, and like then like,
yeah, but there's different value systems, whole different world almost. It's like I think I read somewhere where it's easy to communicate with one class up or one class down, but when you're separated by multiple class levels or however you call it, it's almost a whole different world.
It is.
Like you can't relate to one another. You have completely different value systems. It's
right.
Crazy. And that separation right there is almost like racism.
I wouldn't say it's racism.
No, I said almost like the whole idea of racism. Where
Classism?
Classism,
It's
yeah.
classism.
Classism is a thing, and a lot of people confuse racism and classism. They're two different things, but those two ideas kind of get confused sometimes. But the thing is once you're in poverty, the idea of this universal basic income is to give everybody the chance to get out of poverty. So everybody gets, instead of, if you start in a nice middle class family, you're probably more likely to be middle class yourself. So the idea of universal basic income is everybody gets that ability to start in the middle, sort of.
Yeah, the idea is to give people a chance.
Yeah, to give people a chance. And say in the future all the jobs are gone, or most of the jobs are gone, there's more and more people that are going to be in that lower level and that will need to be given a chance.
Have you guys seen the newest Charlie and the Chocolate Factory?
No, let's not talk about that.
Why not?
Okay,
you mean the Johnny Depp one?
Yeah, the Johnny Depp one.
Yeah.
We're not talking about Johnny Depp movies on this show.
Chill out.
Okay,
The reason why I bring this up is because it actually touches on that idea. Like in that movie, Charlie's dad, he's poor and he's impoverished because he used to work at Charlie in the Chocolate Factory. The factory. And then he lost his job to automation. And then later on, he ends up working there again. But instead of him doing the job that the robot did, he's fixing the robot that is now currently doing his job. So I have a lot of faith in human ingenuity and human capacity to rise above and take on those tasks that have been taken. And I feel like history even proves that.
Well, I agree that there's going to be a bunch of new sectors and new jobs crop up.
Right.
But the thing is the more automation that happens, the less job opportunities there will be. So what about this? What if culturally we move towards more of an entertainment-based or like creative based economy. Do you think that could be a possibility? So
I hadn't really thought about that, but creativity...
universal basic income like gives everybody the ability to free up their time, and since their time's free because they don't have a job, they could be more creative. And I'm not sure what that would look like.
That's what I was going to ask. It's like these discussions tend to happen in the view of like, well, obviously having a job, regardless what it is better than not having a job. And like, I guess my question, like, why? Like, is not working just in and of itself objectively? Like, right now our society is based on that. Like, that's how the economy goes. But like, is not having a job
intrinsically bad?
Intrinsically bad? Like, is it automatically? I don't mean like
and here,
a paid
I can
job.
tell
I just
you
mean like
very quickly why it is because like psychologically, if you're working harder, if you show a capacity for work, you will be more successful.
I guess my question...
Sexually?
Yes, you will.
I guess my question wasn't so much is having... So, like, I work in the insurance industry. My question isn't so much working, like I mean, like, just having a job versus doing... So, if I didn't have my job, I would be doing, like, other things that I liked a lot more. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I feel like a majority of people would do that. Like, there may be, like I said, there may be some people who are like just sit around doing nothing,
smoking weed and
wasting away. But I feel like a majority of people would get bored and they would go pursue the things that they were passionate about versus working. You know, and some people do that with their job anyway, but you know, some people can't. Like, I work in insurance, don't have degrees in other stuff.
It seems like a lot of drive does come from like getting more money. So money is the drive right now. So a lot of people work harder at their job or try this avenue or this.
So say you tomorrow, like you didn't have to, so say you knew you wouldn't lose your house and you could be able to eat. What would you do if you didn't have to go to work tomorrow?
Like, I don't know, but look at all the retired people. They're just off, just sitting around watching hours and hours of TV.
They tend to die very quickly after retiring.
Yeah, as soon as you don't have a job, people's lifespan they tend to die off a lot faster. So actually, the longer you work, the longer you live.
Yeah. So here's my other kind of interjection into that is, why don't people have the capacity to do that now? And the thing is, people do. You hear about these kids that what's the term for it? Trust fund babies.
Losers.
You see trust fund babies as losers?
If we're talking about certain trust fund baby I'm thinking of right now.
But here's the thing. Basically what you're saying is everyone in America is now a trust fund baby. And what can we learn from trust fund babies to help us with this? And the thing is, why does the government have to be part of this? All it takes is 1 or 2 generations of someone to sacrifice their life to work very hard, save a lot of money, put it into investments, and allow that investment to accrue interest. And then all of a sudden, you have 1, maybe 2 kids, you give them that trust fund, and then all of a sudden, they now have that capacity without having to deal with the government.
But that's best case scenario, and that's middle class. We're not talking about those. Those people already have that capability.
But that should be encouraged.
It should be, but like that's the point of universal basic income is a lot of people don't even get to that point, and that's.
But they should, and it's easy to be able to.
That's the argument: is no jobs. How will they be able to get to that point?
I don't believe that's going to ever come.
I'm not saying no jobs. I'm saying think about it right now. There's tons and tons of jobs available. You can get a job anywhere at McDonald's, Walmart, greeters. They just stand there and wave. But think about if all factory jobs go out. I mean, if most factory jobs go away, if most shipping jobs go away, if most farm jobs go away, what is there left? It's all
creativity.
Yeah, it's creativity.
So I like what you were bringing up earlier about creativity. That's the thing that no robot, no automation can really take away from us. And basically, creativity is one of the most underrated things that humans are able to do, and people do not really engage in that aspect of themselves. They choose to do things that are more simple or more secure and not really go for those sort of creative things that they have the capacity to do that makes us unique.
I think part of what I was trying to go for earlier was that like it would free up people to pursue the creative stuff. And so like I said, and maybe this is just because I did grow up in like a stable home where, where things were, there was no risk of losing, being homeless or anything like that. So I grew up in like a middle class family. But if I didn't have to go to my insurance job tomorrow because it's the only job that pays enough to live on with what I need to do, I would definitely be like, there might be like a week or so where I'd be doing nothing, and then I would get really bored and I would start pursuing other stuff and doing other things because I would eventually go nuts. And, I may like learn music, learn singing, learn all this different stuff that I would pursue. Yeah, but and I can do on the side now, but it's difficult to actually make anything out of that financially.
But I think without the financial drive behind it, though, I think a lot of people will have these grand schemes, but how many people will be distracted by watching TV, playing video games?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's also just a theoretical. Like it's really hard to theorize about that kind of society where things have completely changed, because right now it is because a lot of that boredom and like a lot of people will just sit at home and veg when they're not working comes from just being stressed about work or money or stuff like that.
And well, I mean,
because
I guess
a lot of people that have been surveyed say that they're like, it's just there's so much stress all the time that when they do have free time, they just shut down.
That is kind of true. Like when I get home after a long days of work, I don't necessarily want to jump right into doing something heavy like working again. So even if I play a video game, I might even play a video game that's not like mentally engaging. I might just play something that's less engaging, or like we might watch a show that is like more of a comedy sitcom type show, because you can just sit there and laugh and kind of tune out a little bit because it's your way to unwind a little bit. Whereas if I'm watching something that I have to really, really think, like mentally think about, then that's exhausting in and of itself. So after a hard day's work, you come home, sometimes you just don't want to jump in to something else. Like,
I guess where I'm coming at, and this might sound like a little weird, but what specifically, and like I have my own views on this, but I want to hear what you guys think. What is specifically so stressful about being poor? It sounds like a weird question because I feel like in us we like realize, oh well, being poor is stressful, but what exactly is stressful about it?
Well, the stresses of being poor is needing to pay your rent on time, getting your electricity turned off, getting your internet turned off, water turned off. And every time you get something turned off, or every time something like you can't pay your cell phone bill, what goes on top of that? Fees. So you can't pay your cell phone bill, your water gets turned off, your electricity gets turned off. You slowly get this mounting debt against you, and you just can't conquer that, and it becomes like a weight on your shoulders. Like you get more and more discouraged each and every time you fail. So say you're late on your credit card statement, you get a huge... Okay. You go from being $50 in debt to $100 in debt overnight because you're late for one day, and you got a $50 fee for being late. So it's mounting debt. So the debt structure of our country in and of itself is enough to keep people in poverty. And then payday loans will go after people that need the funds.
So going back to my friend, I mean, so she's like I said, she's epileptic. So she has to pay for her medications, which by itself is a ridiculous amount of money, even with the Affordable Care Act that went through. She didn't even have health insurance before the Affordable Care Act because she was epileptic. It's a pre-existing condition. So she has to worry about that. She has to worry about her son, which again, but even outside of her son, she has rent, which in Ohio is stupidly expensive for some reason compared to where I am, compared to like...
Where does she live? Because rent's really
she
good
lives
in Ohio.
in a crap hole in Price Hill.
Does she pay more than $400 a month?
Yeah.
Then she should move into another crap hole in Price Hill, because I lived in a crap hole in Price Hill and had to pay $300.
But anyway, so I mean, you have rent, you have all the utilities, and just one of those things going wrong, like
So here's the thing.
Just
I don't,
can cascade.
I don't want to cut you off because I see where you're going with this. And what I hear right now is people taking more than they can handle. This seems to be the reoccurring theme in all these issues. You can't pay the internet bill. Well, why do you even have to have internet? You can go to a public library. Okay, every single issue that Mike pointed out there could be taken care of if you thought of the problem creatively and were able to rise above. It sounds to me like a lot of the keeping up with the Joneses kind of thing where it's like, well, these people have the internet, they have cable, they have this, they have that, they have whatever, and I have to keep up with it. You have to be able to live within your means, and if you don't make a certain amount of income, then you can't afford to make certain choices.
Yeah, but this isn't even about certain choices. I mean, literally, she worked. The only job she had for a while was working from home on the internet, was because she would get fired after having a seizure. Like, that kind of stuff happened several times because when she has a seizure, literally, her brain's just like a cloud, like for like 2 days afterwards. Like, in other words, she's super slow at work afterwards. Her mind is recovering from it, and so like it's really difficult for her to.
So I'm not understanding why this is extremely relevant.
I'm just giving an example of like
Right.
things that happen to people in poverty.
Yes.
Crappy stuff, like things that would not affect my life, would affect their life in a huge way.
True. And this is what comes with legacy. Now, in our culture, your parents, you have to be a good parent. And it's one of those things where one of the burdens of being a parent is you have to set your future kids up to be better than you were. So you have to put a lot of time and effort into it. Where are her parents in this situation?
They were in worse poverty than she is.
Okay, so she is doing better than she was.
She grew up in like southern Kentucky. Her mom was an army brat that had her out of wedlock, dropped her off at her grandparents' house. Her grandfather / dad was abusive. She was diagnosed with PTSD because of how much she was beaten by her grandfather and then her first husband.
Okay. So how would this because you brought her up because you feel like she would be a good example.
I had a friend, and I was just saying, this is a friend I have who is in poverty, who I've seen. It stresses me out just seeing the things happen to her, let alone them happening to me. I would not have made it this far. Like, I would have, if I had been her, I would have given up by now. So in that sense, I think in one way she is mentally stronger because she has no choice. Like, if the things that had happened to me happened to me, I would probably be dead by now. Like, honestly.
So why would the government being involved be a better solution than private charity?
Well, the thing is
private charity is not a realistic. You cannot expect private charity to cover as much as government would, because in times and it's been proven, like in times that are like when we have economic downturns, people don't give to charity as much. You're not going to have.
So the people that didn't prepare for winter, they suffer the most, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
But we're all going off, like, you're going off this idea that everybody has the same base intelligence, the same base skills, the same base everything, the same base upbringing, and some people have a lower intelligence, or some people have disabilities. Some people don't have certain abilities that they would need to succeed.
Like, do you think? See, here's the thing. Like, I feel like when I went through public school,
right?
There was zero options or opportunity for classes about economics. I didn't get a credit card until I was like 25 years old because I just decided not to. But it was a big problem with many people that get credit cards as soon as they turn 18. If the government is supposed to be looking out for our self-interest, I feel like it has to start as soon as possible. And what it really comes down to is not that I am callous and think that people do need to pull themselves up from the bootstraps, which is such an overused phrase. But it's about starting that kind of dialogue earlier to learn those patterns that have been proven to be successful.
And I'm for that. Like I totally get that. Like I'm all for teaching all those kind of life skills in school and stuff.
So when those sorts of life skills are taught and incentivized in schools, in private and public, however, if they're taught and people still choose not to do them, what is the solution?
I still think there are going to be people who, because of the environment they're in, even if they're wanting to get out, are going to have a very difficult, if not impossible, way of getting out. Like, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of
Well, think about it. Throughout all of mankind's history, there's always been impoverished and rich and middle. And we've never, ever separated from that. There's never been much of a society that's separated from that. There's been a few, European countries that are slowly getting to that point.
Major civilizations skew to a rich group over here, and then the rest of people getting poorer and poorer.
Yeah. So it comes down to the fact that we might think we have the solutions in our mind, but it's never been solved. Throughout all of mankind's history, it's never been solved.
Well, that would also have to imply that that's a problem. What is the problem with that?
The problem is the gap. Why would there need to be? Why does a certain amount of people in society need billions of dollars and other people get nothing, table scraps?
Well, that's why democracy is a brilliant solution, because capitalism and democracy go hand in hand. And with capitalism, you do not force people to buy things. If I make a product, if I brew a beer of my own, I can't force people to buy that. I have to make a product worth buying. And so when you have a society where a certain group of people become really rich, it's because they've made thousands of decisions prior to that to facilitate those sorts of decisions to be made. You know, you make a product that people buy. Okay, all of a sudden you're going to be getting richer. You make a record that people want to buy. All of a sudden you're going to be getting richer. So it allows for people that are talented and have other people in mind and are able to sell those kinds of products to get richer. So I don't see that big gap being as big of a problem as some people. Like, I feel like a lot of people see that unless there's a solid line, you know, when basically like communism, like everyone gets paid the same no matter what.
No,
like some people, I feel like
that's not what universal basic income is.
I agree. But a lot of people see that as like the big thing where like everyone is equal. But when it comes down to it, no one is equal, and it's okay.
I mean, I'm not a communist, and I also don't think talking about the gap, like, oh, why is the gap this huge, is like implying like everyone should make the same. I don't think everyone should make the same. I think there should be a minimum. Like, in other words, this is where like even the worst people in our society are still going to have this minimum standard of living.
So it's these people get the certain basic luxuries that they deserve, and every human being deserves these certain basic luxuries like eating, drinking, housing, and healthcare. I think those are some basic luxuries that every human needs.
I think this is where all the libertarian people that listen to the show are going to be really mad, because like I've argued this with my parents' pastor and stuff, like, where in the Constitution is healthcare a right? I was like, it's not in the Constitution, but we are in a world where we are capable of delivering this kind of thing. Why would we not?
But are we?
Yeah.
Yeah, we are. We'd have to restructure some certain things, and I think it's necessary for the future. But let's kind of jump out of that, because we're going to get into.
I was just going to say, every industrialized country on Earth has some version of this. So
All right. Yeah, I think we've covered the pros and cons a little bit.
I think the pros and cons could go on for another 3 episodes.
Yeah, we could probably talk
you could
about
probably
this
make
for
an
hours.
entire podcast just out of the argument we would probably be having right now.
I think people should just fight over the food in the streets.
We should just throw it out in the streets.
You said a
for
future society based on entertainment.
Oh,
we're gonna watch people fight
merge
for food.
those two ideas.
Oh yeah, so the whole death race thing. So we're all just death race 3000 in the year 3000.
Oh yeah,
3000.
Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna kind of jump into this is kind of the future. Say the automation is here and it's now in place.
The automation passed through the government.
No. Okay, so
robots have a voice.
Universal basic income has passed. It's in place and it's here.
Which version?
It doesn't matter. The one I read in the beginning of the show
where everyone just gets the same.
Yes,
rich or poor.
That is what universal basic income is, Andrew, is that. And then there's little tweaks here and there, like, say, maybe the rich wouldn't.
Okay, but I don't know.
The rich could opt out.
Universal basic income is everybody gets, say, $10,000 across the board, or everybody gets $50,000 across the board. That's exactly what universal basic income is. Now, there's tweaks to it, like, hey, if you're too rich, should you get universal basic income? There's tweaks to that, or if you keep having more and more children, should you keep getting more and more of universal basic income based off of the amount of children you have? Let's just say universal income is in place.
The machines are here and they've taken all of our jobs.
They've taken all. Well, I mean, not all, but I said a majority. So
they left 1% of the jobs left.
I mean, not even that. Just think about it. If there's even just 30% of the jobs, that's 70% of working people that are out of a job, right? So I mean, it's fathomable, right?
Well, here's one point. I don't mean to derail you, but one point in history where this actually did happen was the agricultural revolution, when a lot of these agricultural tools and machines were implemented. At that point, I think it was like 80% of the population were working on farms or owned farms or somehow worked in the farm system. When the machines there got better, they had to do other things.
That's what I'm saying. So
they didn't need a social program, but I believe in the creativity.
Do you think we'll ever get to a point where like the automation we create is so good that there won't be like something that quickly that comes along that we can just start doing?
Say the automation comes and a lot of people, 70% of people are out of work, or 80 or 60. With universal basic income, will we take that income and continue our ingenuity? Will we continue to grow as a society, or will we stagnate? What usually spawns like new technologies or new revolutions is like a period of time where there's a struggle or there's like a famine. So what usually gets people going is that struggle. Mm-hmm. So if we're in this society of universal basic income, everybody eats, will we just stagnate as a people? Will we just stop coming up with new ideas or stop coming up with new solutions to problems because we have that fallback? We don't need it to survive.
I definitely don't think so, because I don't think we're ever going to lose our creativity, like as a species. Like there may be, like I said, there may be people that don't, but as a whole, we're always going to be creative.
Yeah, but look at peak civilizations, like when Rome was at its peak and everything was plentiful and people had like lots of money and food. That's when their society crashed, right? That's when their society started going down. It's because things were easy. When things are too good, like if we implement this universal basic income, will we start to degrade as a society? Will we just start to like fall off?
Right. I think you can't be too callous. Like I know I can be a bit too callous towards people at the lower end of the spectrum, but at the same time, that's such a foundational thing where people have to reach out to them, because when you allow successful people to succeed, it's going to bring up that lower class as well. And there's no better example than America. When you look at our poor, our nation's poor, some of the biggest problems are heart disease, obesity, all these problems that of all these other countries, they're poor, wish they had. One of the biggest problems of our lower class is overeating. And so
or eating unhealthily.
Right. But they have access. See, that's the thing. Like it comes down to knowledge being power. When people are more knowledgeable and are able to implement those things, they're going to be more powerful. So to me, one of the big aspects is like the whole power struggle. You know, it's when someone isn't making a lot of money, does that mean they're less powerful? Well, maybe they have other talents that aren't profitable, but I mean, Vincent van Gogh, he died so poor, but now all of a sudden his art is worth millions of dollars.
But how does that go off of the stagnation? Like, will we stagnate as a people? Okay.
Here's my random. I'm just randomly thinking. What about? And I'm not that well versed on like prior civilizations. Like what collapsed? Like, in other words, did they just collapse economically so they couldn't do anything, or did they collapse like they just all murdered each other, or like what happened? I'm genuinely not that well versed on like the fall of Rome.
Yeah, it seems like from my understanding of it, it seemed like they got too soft. They thought that they were undefeatable. They couldn't be taken down, and they allowed enemies to creep in.
Okay. Exactly. That drive to become that drive that they had to become an empire, that drive that they had to become the greatest country or empire in the world, that drove them to like the top. And okay, if you look at more recent history, so when we were in the Cold War, we needed to defeat Russia. Like it wasn't a war of weapons. Mm-hmm. It was a war of what can we develop faster than them. And that's when we came up with all of our space technologies. We came up with a bunch of technologies, a whole array of different things we use today. Like the internet came from it, a whole bunch of things. And once we have this universal basic income in place, I'm just saying that as the argument, will we get comfortable as a society and start to digress? And this is your chance to be creative. We're just being creative right now. We're not saying like facts. This is just like using our minds to be creative.
There's a million different ways you could answer it, but as far as like UBI and stuff, well, like you're talking about Van Gogh, like how many people do you think would be creative like that if they could versus would just waste away? Like, do you think a majority of society would just waste away? Or do you think
that happens already? And that's the unfortunate thing for people like us to see.
But I think part of that is just being because of the society we live in. In other words, they're seen as less.
Yeah, this like, future society we're talking about is nothing like what we're living in now.
So basically, the poor, a lot of those people live in shame because they're poor. Like even if they're trying to get out, they feel a lot of shame all the time. So like if we're just in a society where they're not really made to feel shame, they're just people that don't work and just have the minimum income, do you think creativity would be...
And do you think people will start going, it's like, okay, so you have the ability now to study this, just go to college for the fun of it now, instead of just going to college because you have to survive. Mm-hmm. So like say you want to broaden your knowledge of this type of topic, like philosophy, or broaden your knowledge of science, like different science fields. Say you have in this new society we've created, you have the ability to go out there and learn because you're not having to worry about needing every single dime to survive.
Yeah. I see where you guys are going with this. I don't know what it is, but like I can't get in like the frame of mind to see this actually happening because I just keep seeing I keep trying to envision this happening, and all that basically does is move the goalpost.
Well, I mean, think about the movie. Have you ever seen WALL-E?
I have, yeah.
Okay, so at the end of Wall-E, I'm not, spoiler alert if anybody's never seen Wall-E, or if
It's like 15 years.
if you ever want to watch Wall-E, spoiler alert. These people, everything's automated as a society, and everybody has grown fat and lazy and sitting in like floating wheelchairs.
Yeah, but they also were stuck on a spaceship and couldn't do that much.
Yeah, but that's an
Earth
artistic interpretation of a society like this, right? So that's an artistic interpretation of what if everything's automated, and what if everything that we could ever dream of or ever think of is at our fingertips. What would it look like?
Where it comes down to is meritocracy. Like with the big advances in technology, it's because competition. People want to succeed. People have ideas, and then they act upon the competition that they have in their surroundings. I don't think that Apple would be Apple today if it wasn't for Microsoft.
Right.
It's a continual like leapfrog sort of thing. And so anything that we have to implement, like I think that like with this universal basic income,
universal bacon,
pay me in bacon.
Everyone gets 1 pack of bacon a week.
Heck yeah, I'm all for that. Sign me up right now.
Let's do that. Yeah, let's do that.
From the poorest of the poor to the richest of the rich.
Oink oink.
That's going to be the end of that poem. I was going to keep going, but oink oink.
Oh man. But really what it comes down to is when you limit the most capable people, it's going to make the least capable suffer. So what sorts of things can we implement that allows the most capable people to be capable and come up with these unbelievable inventions and ideas without making the lowest and the least capable people suffer?
Now, that's the benefit of UBI, I think, a little bit, is it gives this baseline. There's everybody's at this line where there's no more poverty, I guess. But it's not stopping people if you want to go out there and to get more money. If you want to go get a better job, if you want to make all the money that you possibly can, it's not stopping you from doing that. It's just giving you the more opportunity. So, like, say you can still make $1 million or $1 billion, just everybody is pulled up a little bit to the same entry-level playing field. So everybody gets a little bit of a push or a little bit of a boost. So everybody starts at this base. It's starting at this basic assumption that everybody, gets something. So I'm not sure how good or bad that is, but that's the idea of it. But it's still going to allow people who have that drive, who have that want, to go out and get it.
Here's a question I have: I haven't read their biographies. Were Bill Gates or Steve Jobs like dirt poor before?
No,
before they made their.
They were not. No, that's a big misnomer.
And I was just wondering, like, were they like struggling in poverty before they like invented their stuff? Like,
no, that's the whole thing. Is everybody likes to say, "Hey, our company started from a garage." It's a cool story. It's fun to talk about. But Bill Gates came from a rich family. He came from a rich family. He had connections. He dropped out of college because he had this job that was better than he could have finished college, but he dropped out because, hey, I had this opportunity to continue on with Microsoft. Why continue college when I have this great opportunity at Microsoft? So that's the only reason why he dropped out of college. And the same with Bill Gates. That's the only reason why he dropped out of college, is because he had something better.
Would it be important if they were dirt poor before?
No.
What was the question?
I was just questioning because, like, I guess what you made it almost imply, like, basically, if everyone was at the baseline, that people wouldn't be motivated to try to be better than the baseline. That if we had the UBI, like, because if people were like had this stuff provided for, that many people wouldn't be motivated to try to improve beyond that. They would just stay there. I guess. Is failing economically the same as like failing at like an idea you have?
Yeah, that's the thing. Should we allow somebody to fail? Like, oh, you don't get to eat this week because you failed. Like that's not like the failure. No, I guess my question,
for. If I go out and I try to pursue like say I want to, I don't know, do some like
be a soccer mom.
That's not. I'm not.
Andrew's
so
a
like,
soccer
if I
mom.
start taking like piano lessons and I want to be a great pianist, and I just like try and I just bomb, like that has a much different effect on me than like I'm gonna be homeless. I don't even know what I'm gonna do. Oh my gosh! Like I'm panicking inside. Like what happens? Like it's a much different type of failure, I think.
Well, here's
mentally.
one thing that I was thinking about, like back, like preparing for this week, and I was just thinking, now the idea is universal basic income. What other ideas maybe not even have been brought up that could address similar problems and have better results? And one of the things is it comes down to wisdom and knowledge of things. Like you brought up earlier, you give somebody a ton of money, they won the lottery. Guess what? Most people go broke because they don't know how to spend it right. I think that school and what is taught in school should be incentivized more. I don't see what the problem is with paying students for good grades. Like, what if we encourage students more? What if there was ways to encourage people's baseline knowledge more and allow for people to succeed there? Because I feel like all these problems that are addressed with universal basic income can be mitigated with just better decision making.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a good idea to incentivize different aspects of society.
I'm not necessarily against it. I've never really thought about it. I guess my question would be like, if you incentivize, what if someone's just genuinely stupid? Like, if you basically like you're just putting shame. Look at you. You're worth less in like. As a person, not even like in society, because like maybe like you're not as useful or like you don't provide
as
much
more in society than other people.
So what about this? Like UBI is different than incentivization to learn. So UBI is just there. There's no incentives behind it, and the whole idea is it exists for everyone. It's just there. It becomes part of society. Now, Andrew, you're saying that if you incentivize different things, it can still leave people behind, like people who aren't equipped to.
Or it could just like basically instead of having like class divisions based just on, hey, I'm rich, you're poor, you have like divisions based on like, I'm knowledgeable about this thing, and it's more. But we already kind of do that. Like if you look at like.
Yeah, but UBI is not really built to incentivize people. It's built to just keep people. It's built to keep people out of starvation, or built to keep people out of that low poverty level. Like, so we could also incentivize learning on top of that.
Let's go back to the idea that
the idea of the idea of the idea.
But this has implemented. What psychologists have learned is actually income inequality. The only time it's actually a bad thing is when a high income group is right next to a low income group. So it's a relative income disparity that's an issue. So if this was implemented, what would end up happening, because it always does, is there's going to be haves and have-nots. So the distinction between the haves and have-nots are going to end up becoming more and more concrete, which will end up being like, it's kind of a crappy movie, but did you ever see the movie with Justin Timberlake where it's like about time? Well, it's going to end up eventually being in a society like that, where you have to pay in to different sectors of society. You've earned and accumulated a certain amount of credits or money or whatever. You have been able to go into this other sector of society. That seems like a dystopia to me. Yeah, I don't think that's a good thing.
If this is implemented, it's just going to inflate. In other words, this is going to be the new bottom, and they're still going to get even more high. Like the high end's still going to get higher.
Well, there's always. There's going to be a bottom no matter what.
Well, yeah. I guess my question is like, that's always happens. Like,
right. We're just making the bottom better. We're just making the bottom better, because right now the bottom is truly the absolute bottom, whereas this is, making the bottom a little bit more survivable and a little bit more, I guess, better for most people in most of the people in society.
And I think like Cord, this is probably why you and I would disagree. Like,
I guess the argument: what is the bottom? What should be the bottom?
well, not just what should be the bottom, what should be the top.
Okay,
I think is the other thing is like, I think there should be some sort of, I guess like I'm not completely free market. Like I'm mostly free market. Like I'm for the market, but I'm also against a concentration of wealth so extreme that that person has extreme power to manipulate the system in a way that gives them even more of an advantage than they would have naturally.
Right. An inequality of power.
Right.
Yes.
And so like you have these people or these corporations that basically take advantage of their power and just like change the rules. And so it pushes their people down and it brings more and more to them to the point where like you're saying, you have the really rich right next to the really poor because like they're draining money from the middle here.
But don't we already have policies designed to deter that? Like that's why monopolies are illegal. Is so that it deters.
But I guess they've been deregulated over the last like 40 years, like 40, 50 years.
But that still requires people to make conscious decisions to buy certain products. It's not forced like a government implemented.
I'm not talking about individual products. I was talking about, so you have like a company like Walmart, who's a multi-billion-dollar group, who then pays Congress, lobbies them, who at first paid to like make lobbying legal. So now they have the power to go to them and be like, we'll pay you this much if you pass, if you vote for this type of law. They can help write the laws, and then that screws over other people that are lower down.
How? You got to be more specific than that.
Okay, so Walmart. So like the Walmart
is evil because
they go in, they go to Congress and they say, "Hey, if you let us be a certain size." So monopolies used to. We have a lot of rules about monopoly. We would break them up. So Walmart goes in, for example, maybe not be Walmart. Let us have this. Let us help write. Well, they'll pay Congress. They'll pay for like campaigns and stuff, and then they'll say, "Hey, rewrite this rule so that we can make more money, pay our employees less, and have a bigger concentration of the market. Maybe not the whole market. So it's not a complete monopoly. But
so if they have more power, they have more lobbying capabilities.
Like, instead of like,
because who has the true power? They're paying the government to gain more power because more concentration is actually in the government.
But then the government is deregulating them, which gives them more power again.
Okay, so if you're a local company and you're trying to import goods, Walmart can import that goods at a cheaper price because they lobbied the government to get discounts on certain things, or they lobbied the government to get certain tax breaks or tax rebates. So they keep the power because they have an easier path to success.
And this is a common issue, but the thing is, the only reason that would be successful is if Walmart is providing a better service than the local companies.
Yeah, but they're not. So if you go to Walmart, you don't get good customer service, do you get
customer service might not be as important as
Walmart,
a lower price.
Walmart used to, like if you go back to the history of Walmart, like when Sam Walton was still alive, they had great customer service. When he was around, he made he did build up that company. But now that they've been around forever, they're humongous. They move into towns. They push smaller businesses out, and this is the only option you have.
But that's why companies like Kroger's are doing amazing, because they're filling that gap. And that's where free market, I think, does allow for the most freedom and creativity in the business marketplace.
Agree to disagree on that. Okay, so what do you guys think about this? We're going to start getting into the very final thing. Yeah. Okay, because we could go all night.
Mike's bored now.
No, I'm not bored. I'm not bored. I'm just saying we could go all night on this, and this is getting into a completely different...
Yeah, we've kind of
completely
got
different,
derailed, but...
Completely different argument. That's like capitalism and all that stuff. Okay.
Boring.
So we have all this free time with universal basic income. There's a lot of people that aren't working. They're just stuck at home or stuck doing this or that. Okay, with extra free time, do you think that crime rates will go up or down? So think about it this way. So in the summer when kids are out of school and it's hot out, everybody's outside doing something, there's nothing to do, crime rates go up. They skyrocket in the summer. There's nothing to do. People are just sitting around and the crime rates go up because, as human beings, we need something to do. So if a lot of people aren't working and universal basic income is in place, do you think people will
they'll turn to crime.
Turn to crime.
Yes. So there's actually a really amazing interview. So one of the psychologists that I listen to, his name's Jordan Peterson. He's out of Canada. I almost said Canada.
I'm just going to say right now.
He has a really interesting interview with another psychologist that did tons of research about income inequality and how crime interacts with all this kind of stuff. And what it comes down to is hierarchy. And I talked about this a little bit earlier. It comes down to guys want to rise the ranks in their hierarchy. They want to be the most dominant male. They want to be the guy that's attracting the most girls and all that kind of stuff. And when you have a group of very educated and like wealth bringing people with people that are poor, one of the easiest things for the poor people to do to rise through that kind of hierarchy and show their ability to provide is to go into crime. Stealing is easier than earning. I mean, it comes down to that. It's as simple as that.
So your argument is it will go up. Do you have a counter argument? Because we've talked about this before, and my idea is always if people are not working, they go out and commit crime, or they have a higher probability to cause problems.
I mean, I honestly wouldn't disagree. I guess my question is what the degree would be. I guess I would like to see a study like how much of crime is due to just I'm bored, which I feel like that's mostly like teenagers, and then like how much of that is I'm also like I don't want to work and earn money. I just want to take stuff and get money. How much of that motivation would be gone if they knew they didn't have to worry about like, are they going to survive the next month?
Well, and I think one of the examples you could look to for that sort of thing is if you look into tribal societies, and it seems like a stretch, but let me try to get you there. So in a tribal society, it's not a modern society at all. Their hierarchy and what they value is vastly different than what we value. And so the more attractive guys in those societies are attractive for far different reasons. And so the idea is if people want to have certain values, then you allow those people to congregate in areas and you allow people of other values to congregate in other areas. When you shuffle two groups of people together forcefully, that's where you get issues. And I think that interview, if you look it up, kind of goes into that idea of forced integration of low and high income sorts of things. Like if you let people do things freely, it tends to work itself out.
I mean, I guess, do you not think that wouldn't UBI be allowing more people to do things freely though?
Maybe.
Like if I'm not worried like, oh, I have to work like 3 jobs, 60 hours a week, like just to get by.
But why are you working 3 jobs already? Because if you were to think smarter instead of harder, you would do something that was more, it would be more valued, so you would get more for your time. See, that's where like you have to fail to learn kind of comes into. Do you learn more by being told that that's hot, if there's a hot iron? Or do you learn more by touching it and being like, holy crap, that just burned my finger? You have to allow people to fail so that they learn. I feel like it's a human condition.
Okay, so we've kind of covered all the tenets of this topic, or
we have not.
Not even close. We could do this. This podcast is now Universal Basic Income and the Evils of Man.
Universal Bacon Intake Podcast.
Universal Bacon Income.
I require 5 strips of bacon for this interview.
5 strips of bacon.
You're not being interviewed.
Okay, you're not being interviewed. Co-host.
You're not famous enough yet.
You're not famous enough. You're not. We're not there.
Maybe one day.
We'll never be famous if I can't edit this.
You'd better leave that in there. At the very end, we'll never be famous if I can't edit this.
We talked about universal basic income. how will we pay for it now? How would we be able to pay for universal basic income as a society?
Right.
Where would we get the money? Where would we get it?
Well, that's where it would come from the most successful.
Well, okay.
That's where it
Here's
would
my
come
question: Is I guess and a lot of people are against, like I guess people that take your position are against that. Do you think that in and of itself demotivates the rich from? Because what I mean, there's a good number.
It's a fear of losing power.
Not a majority
they're
of them.
afraid of losing their power, and so that's why this will never be implemented.
No, what I was going to say was not a majority of them, but there are a group of multi-millionaires and billionaires that are for.
Like Bill Gates, I think
You have
might
like
be.
Buffett, Bill Gates, and like Nick Hanauer, and like two other guys. I forget their names. They're like, yeah, they should do this to us. I'm perfectly cool with this. Like, we have more than I have way more than I need, and I don't
So
see.
three people.
No,
I'm just asking. I guess
just to give the numbers real quick. Just annually in America, it would cost $3.2 trillion to implement this. $3.2 trillion, and that's just if every citizen gets $10,000. Now,
Okay.
how would we be able to implement this, right? So, okay, let's just think about this. The country of Norway. In Norway,
It is a country.
It is a country, yes, obviously. They have a government trust fund, basically, a government savings account for the people. And the reason why they have that is because they have natural resources in Norway, like they have oil. So in Norway, they have natural resources like oil, and instead of giving that oil to a bunch of companies, there is companies that get that oil, but they put a lot of the taxes and a lot of the money they get from that oil, they take that money and put it into the coffers of the people. So, okay, basically if you retire or you need the money, I'm not sure how they disperse it, but the government is planning on like using that.
They planned for it.
They plan for it. So the
it's
thing is,
premeditated. Yeah.
we wouldn't necessarily have to tax the rich to get to this point. In America, there is tons and tons of natural resources available, and right now, we as Americans own the land, right? So the land is the country's, but a lot of companies are using the land for pennies on the dollar because they have deals with our government. So a logging company might come in and get all this lumber from this forest, and they might pay hardly anything because they're getting it from the government.
Because otherwise it would sit dormant. Okay.
Well, sort of.
Where are you going with this?
Okay, so where I'm going with is this. So say we would raise the costs to utilize that land and wood. We would raise the costs to utilize the natural resources in our country, and that money that is created from using the natural resources that we all, as U.S. citizens, pretty much, it should be ours, I guess. That's the
it
thought.
is ours. Here's the thing, though. I feel like this is an economic problem.
Yeah,
right?
but
that's what you're
Well,
basically
I was going to say, like,
out.
if you raise the price for those companies to use that stuff, that's going to raise the prices on all of our stuff.
Right.
What I was going to say though is that's basically the definition of socialism. So socialism, because people like say, "Oh, the government doing stuff is." I was like, no, the government. Literally, the only definition is the main definition is. In other words, there's no CEOs. Like it's basically the workers. All the profit goes to them, and it's up to them to reinvest it in the company, but it all goes to them. So like, if we go in there and we take those resources and we're the ones making the profit, that's basically the definition of that. That's all I was going to say.
That's one idea of how to develop the income to pay for universal basic. How to develop the funds to pay for universal basic income is by utilizing the land and say,
Right.
Okay, so
that's a good way to get it started. But here's the thing: I feel like all this stuff, all these problems, are so overcomplicated, especially economically. And the question I have is, do we have our debt as a nation? Do we have our debt under control?
No, we don't.
Okay, then let's not overcomplicate things.
We've talked about universal basic income this entire episode, and my thinking is this: we won't probably ever get to it, or we might not ever need it. I think basically, as we develop as a society, there's going to be whole new job sectors that are going to crop up. And the whole idea was just to discuss that possibility. But I think we might not even need it. I think we're going to keep growing as a society, and we're going to have so many different jobs that crop up that we can't even fathom it right now. There's going to be so many different developments. There's going to be so many different new divisions of labor.
I think problems will solve themselves. You allow us to solve them. But my final thoughts on a lot of this stuff is keep things simple. Like let's not as a country take on more than we can chew. And right now, unfortunately, it's one of those things where it seems like economically our debt as a nation is nearly uncontrollable. So as a nation, we can't take on more social programs when things are already almost uncontrollable. I'm right now trying to save up for a house, and I have to get my home, me and my wife together. We have to work towards making sure our debt is as low as possible and our down payment as high as possible. And as a nation, when we keep taking, going further and further and further into debt, we're actually taking away from the lowest common denominator. And so what we're talking about this for is the fact that none of us here want the poorest of the poor to die. None of us want the poorest of the poor to not succeed. We want them to succeed. And I think those are the solutions we need to find. And so as a nation, we have to actually, I feel like we have to look to our politicians to be better with our tax dollars and be truthful to us and be realistic so that we can get into a debt situation where we can again be able to think about this universal basic income in a way that is realistic without going into such debt that it's unmanageable. Because we want these people, that this kind of implementation to succeed. And it's not a matter of do we want them to succeed or not. We want them to succeed. It's about just finding the best way to do that in a way that's realistic.
Yeah, I think that kind of sums it up a little bit, exactly what you said.
Any last thoughts?
Any last thoughts, Andrew?
No, my brain's tired right now.
So I think there's smaller things that we can do to get better, and we might not ever need this universal basic income. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there and kind of get our brains thinking, what could society look like if that was implemented, and would we ever actually need that? Because I think that's one of those things where that's a grasp. Okay, so we basically just covered the whole slew of it, and
we're going to have a fun time editing this.
We're going to have a great time editing this.
And by we mean you.
Thanks, Andrew, for coming in. Thanks, Harrison, for coming in. And I'll thank myself later.
Wow.
I'll thank myself later.
That sounded bad.
We appreciate you too, man. You're not the only one.
Your wife can thank you later.
We thank you, Mike.
All right, yeah, this went way longer, and I should have known a topic like this we'd get distracted and go off in all sorts of directions. So
it's fine if the podcast is longer, except you have to edit it more. But
I have to edit it more. I think I can clean it up pretty nice. So.
But I also like the sidetracked stuff. So
thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Harrison.
I look forward to many spirited conversations with Harrison in the future.
You can find us at the Future Jam on Twitter, at the Future Jam on Instagram, and if you have any ideas for future episodes or feedback or thoughts, you can send them to thefuturejam@gmail.com.